off my video.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Dewey.
Welcome, everybody. This is Carol Topp, and you are attending our webinar tonight for homeschool leaders on planning an uncertain future in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending, and I hope this is helpful to you and helps you make decisions in this very difficult time that we're all facing as homeschool leaders. Let me start out by saying my name is Carol Topp. I'm your host tonight. My website, if you haven't already heard of it, is HomeschoolCPA.com. Yes, I'm a CPA, and over at HomeschoolCPA.com, I offer my accounting services to homeschool organizations, nonprofits, and businesses. I homeschooled my own daughters for 14 years, so I'm a retired homeschool mom. They're grown-ups now, emancipated adults. So I devote a lot more time to helping homeschool leaders through writing books, doing webinars, blog posts, phone consultations, things like that. I also moderate a group for homeschool leaders on Facebook called I Am a Homeschool Group Leader. We just passed 1,400 members there. We've been adding a lot in the last few weeks as homeschool leaders have a lot of questions and want a lot more support and encouragement from other leaders, and that's what this event is tonight. So come and join us if you haven't already joined us over on Facebook. I Am a Homeschool Group Leader. I do want to tell you, since I have kind of a captive audience tonight, that I am looking for people to mentor who would like to help homeschool leaders like I help them. And because I am looking to transition my experience and the things I have learned by helping homeschool leaders over the last 15 to 20 years. So I've mentored 2 people so far, and the third one is currently being mentored to help homeschool leaders, and I'm interested in taking on a few more mentees. So if you have a passion for helping homeschool leaders, if you have a background, obviously, in homeschooling, nonprofit experience, a lot of you do, and if you have an accounting background, that's even better. Hop on over to homeschoolcpa.com/mentoring and see if that's something you think you might be interested in doing in the future. All right, here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to start with a little bit of housekeeping, important reminders from me, and then panel introductions. And then here are the topics we're going to cover tonight. And as we just talk through each topic, I'll briefly introduce it, give kind of my input on it, and then the panelists will get a chance to talk. So we'll introduce them pretty early on. We're going to talk about how you make decisions as a board, assuming most of you are running nonprofit organizations and have a board, a leadership team, whatever you call those. What tools our panelists might be using in their planning, social distancing, and then there'll be a time for Q&A. Then we'll have some ideas from the panelists. Amanda, can you mute yourself? I'm getting some little feedback from you, I think. Thank you. And then unmute when you're ready to talk. Thank you. Then we're going to hear ideas from the panelists about what they're doing in their particular groups as they face this uncertain future. The last subject we'll talk about is how to communicate plans to members, and then followed up with a Q&A. I think this will run at least an hour, probably if there's lots of questions for the panelists. The Q&A time might expand it to be an hour and a half, but you can feel free to leave whenever you need to, dear attendees, because this is being recorded and will be offered on my website, homeschoolcpa.com/uncertain, in another day or two, as soon as I figure out how to do it. Okay. All right, here's the housekeeping. There is a chat box where you can put in questions there, although we probably prefer you use the Q&A, which is on your panel there, and type in your questions there. It's easier for our moderator of our chat room, who is Doreen Browning. She helps moderate the Facebook group with me. She's moderating our chat room tonight. So it's easier if you have a question to put it in the Q&A. We'd like to keep the chat box to be polite and respectful. Tried to keep it to only asking questions, although we prefer you use the Q&A function for that. Please avoid opinions or discussions. It's distracting to our panelists. It's distracting to Doreen, who's trying to sift out through the questions. Opinions and discussions, well, that's what Facebook is for. so not this webinar. I already said the recording link will be sent to you in a few days. So don't worry if you miss part of it or if my screen freezes. Don't worry, the recording seems to keep recording even if one of us freezes for a second or two. And then I do want to remind you that everybody's group is different. During our dress rehearsal with the panelists, we even were marveling about how different the groups are and how different the states are that we live in, the places we live in. So, dear panelists, tonight is just a chance for you to listen, learn, and take from this what applies to you. And everyone, let's try to remember not to judge other people's decisions because we don't know their group, we don't know the limitations or the constraints that they're operating under. This is all just mostly a listen and learn, take what's helpful to you kind of night. All right, some important reminders from me as I was putting together this workshop. I came across a wonderful quote from Abraham Lincoln in his speech, A House Divided. And he starts that speech by saying this: if we could first know where we are and whither we are tending, we could then better judge what to do and how to do it. And I thought, I bet every homeschool leader out there felt like Abraham Lincoln felt when he wrote this speech. Now, I think we maybe know where we are, maybe, no, maybe not, but we have no idea of whither we are tending or where we're going. But obviously, if we knew where we were going and what the future held, we could better judge what to do and how to do it, but we can't. And we don't. So we feel very much like President Lincoln felt as he wrote that speech. I'm going to touch on this house divided principle a little bit in a few more slides, but I thought we could probably identify very much with the frustration the president felt and that we're feeling at this point in our lives. When I try to speak to homeschool leaders, I have three things I really always try to emphasize to them and repeat because we forget. One of my mantras is, dear homeschool leader, you cannot be all things to all people, so stop trying. And this point with the pandemic shutting down so many of the programs for homeschool leaders and homeschool families, you couldn't even be some things to some people. You could hardly be anything to anybody. So you certainly could never be all things to all people. You are also not responsible for homeschooling other people's children. You are responsible for only homeschooling your children, meaning those in your household related to you by birth or adoption. You are not responsible for homeschooling the children in your program. Their parents are the ones who are responsible for homeschooling them, not you. And closely related to that is the last thing I always like to remind homeschool group leaders is that your group or your program is not essential to the success in homeschooling. If your group has to close, has to go on hiatus, has to take a break for whatever reason, your members should all be able to continue to go on homeschooling successfully. And if your members are dependent upon your group or your program to homeschool, well, you probably are not helping equip them to be successful homeschoolers because they should be able to go on even without your wonderful programs. Now, I don't want your programs to have to stop. I want them to keep going. I want them to be successful, but we don't want our members to be dependent upon our program to be homeschooling. Finally, never ever forget that it is okay if you have to go on hiatus or take a pause for your group. It's okay if you have to do that. It's okay if you have to suspend some of your activities or even all of your activities. It's okay. The world won't end. It's okay. And it's also okay if you can only offer programs to some students. Again, you can't please everybody all the time, and you're not responsible for homeschooling other people's children, so it's okay if you can only offer some of your programs to some of your students. You know, back to Abraham Lincoln, when he talked in his speech about a house divided against itself cannot stand, he was really emphasizing cooperation or a shared purpose. Especially President Lincoln talked a lot about the importance of the union, the shared purpose. So I want you, when you're figuring out what you can do in the future, what you can do this fall and this next coming school year, to really think about what is your house's foundation. In other words, what is your organization's purpose? what is its mission? You may have it written down in your bylaws and haven't read it in a long time or thought about it in a long time. But your purpose is what you need to keep focusing and go back to focusing on. Your activities are not necessarily the same thing as your purpose. Your activities can change without changing your purpose. Like, for example, your purpose is probably in some way, shape, or form to encourage homeschool families, right? To support them, to encourage them, to equip them. How you do that, your activities can change. You might have always done it with a homeschool co-op, live in-person co-op, and you maybe can't do that in the same way. So how can you still accomplish your purpose with different activities? That's what you need to think about, and some of our panelists might be able to address that tonight. All right, speaking of panelists, let's meet them. Panelists, let's take one at a time and give us your name, what state you're from. Tell us a little bit about your group, maybe its purpose, if you know what its purpose is, and maybe some of your main activities. Amanda Sillen in Ohio, why don't you start us off?
Hey, Carol. So my name's Amanda Sillen, and I'm in Ohio. We're actually central Ohio, so we're about 40 miles east of Columbus in Newark, Ohio. And I'm the director of the Excellence in Learning Community Cooperative. And we're both a support group and a co-op. So our support group is more focused on, we have a large curriculum library that people can borrow books from for a whole year, field trips, supportive meetups, things like that. And then our co-op is more focused on co-op classes and milestone events, special events, field day, more have to be done in person type of things. We don't typically separate them out in that way. We just say we're Excellence Learning Community Co-op, and it encompasses all of that. So we have about 75 families that attend classes, and we're just happy to be homeschooling our kids together. So I was going to read our mission statement, but it's long, and I think we're going to get to it later. So I'll let somebody else go.
Thank you. Amanda Campbell, you want to unmute and introduce yourself? We've got two Amandas and an Angela tonight. So Amanda Campbell.
Hi, I'm Amanda Campbell, and I'm the president of Enrich RI, which is a secular homeschooling group here in Rhode Island. Of course, Rhode Island's the smallest state. You could drive from the farthest 2 points in about an hour. So we also have members from Connecticut and surrounding Massachusetts. And despite the fact that we're all kind of close, we hold things all over the state because Rhode Islanders don't like to drive very far. We have over 300 families that are members, and we do a lot of things, but they sort of fall in three categories. Support, obviously, advocacy, which is a big deal for us. We spend a lot of energy and time on supporting families, how they communicate with the school systems. We build relationships with school systems. And then also real world learning, and that can be field trips, that can be science fairs, and we also have run, well, before COVID, we ran 4 different co-ops ranging from over 100 kids all day, including a swim in a pool, all the way to an unschooling, our wild schooling program, literally kids with fire in the woods. So we have a large range of needs that we try to meet, and have a lot of fun doing it.
Thank you. Angela Taylor, tell us about your group.
All right. Hey, everyone. I am Angela Taylor, as Carol just said, and I am in Fort Worth, Texas. So I run a co-op group that runs about roughly around 100 families normally. This semester, coming up semester, clearly we're going to have a much smaller group going in, but we're part of a larger organization. So our co-op is just one aspect of our group. It's a little bit like Amanda's, actually probably both Amanda's, where we have our larger group as a whole, you know, holds graduations, holds field trips, parties, and get-togethers, mom's night outs, and things like that. And then the co-op is just an aspect of that. So yeah, I think that's about us in a nutshell.
Thank you. I can't decide if I want to stay in Ohio and go to Amanda Sillen's group or move to Rhode Island go to Amanda Browning's or Amanda Campbell's group, or go to Texas. Oh my gosh, they all sound so fun. Now I don't homeschool my kids anymore. I still want to go to all these things. Okay, moving on though, we're going to talk about making decisions as a board. And as you heard, the panelists come from different parts of the country. Most of them are fairly good sized organizations, though we're not really talking about the tinies here. But let's talk about making decisions as a board. Here's some advice, some tips for me. When you're trying to make a decision, try to have consensus on your board. You're never going to get consensus from all your members. Remember, homeschoolers are opinionated. If there's 100 homeschoolers in the room, there's 120 opinions, right? But try to have consensus on your board as much as possible. It's not always possible, but try to have consensus, which is agreement among everybody. Present decisions to members as a board decision. So I really respected my homeschool co-op when I was on the board, and we said, if we make a decision in this room, when we leave this room and go out and tell our members, we say, this is what the board decided. Even if I personally didn't agree with the board, I kept that personal opinion in that boardroom, in that meeting. It did not go out. That was gonna sound like gossiping and divisive. So the board decision was what was presented to the meetings, even if there were individual members that maybe had different opinions. So try to present decisions as board decisions. That's very important for your unity. And I already told you, you can't please everyone. So focus on what you can do. Given the pandemic and the virus and the concerns for health and safety, you need to consider health and safety restrictions when you make these decisions, and you need to consider your own time and sanity. Focus on what you can do, not on what you can't. I got an email this week, and this woman described the lovely programs that she offered, and it was mostly an emphasis on, I can't do these things, I can't do those things, or our group can't do those things. Well, let's try to focus on what you can do, even with some of the health and safety restrictions that we're operating under. All right, dear panel, let's hear about, oops, I meant to go back. Let's hear about how your board makes decisions. And let's start, Angela, let's start with you since we ended with you. Can you unmute yourself and Angela? Yeah.
Sure. Are we speaking specifically decisions as far as just generally as part of the organization? That's what we're looking for here?
Or if you want to talk
decisions
about how you're making decisions now in light of the pandemic and the things for the fall, if you want to particularly emphasize that, I think that'd be most helpful to our listeners.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking with this. So one of the first things that we did was just think about what could we possibly even accomplish in the fall with the given guidelines that we have right now. And so we are planning for the best for the fall, and I think we're going to get to that later. But what we do know about our particular group is that, and maybe homeschoolers in general are a little bit like this, but our particular group doesn't like to be near people who are sick. And they tend to, if we plan something and somebody hears of somebody having a little bit of a stomach flu, all of a sudden like 30 families are out. Like they're just not even gonna, come and participate. So we know that about our group. We know they're a little bit, what's the word? A little
sensitive.
Yes, when it comes to things like that. So we planned with that in mind as far as the guidelines that we set up going forth for the fall. So we we made a decision as a board that we would move forward just as though everything was fine. But we also knew that if this does not clear up, or if our members didn't feel comfortable with what was happening currently currently being when we begin, that they weren't going to show up. So we started to make contingency plans together as a board.
Angela, how big is your board?
There are 6 of us on the board.
Okay, very good. Amanda Campbell, let's hear about how big is your board? First of all, that's always interesting to know. And tell us about some of the ways your board makes decisions.
So when I took over the president's position 2 years ago, we had a board of over 9 people. And talk about hard to make consensus. We couldn't even get to the point of voting. There was so many of us. So anyway, we are now a board of 5 who work really well together and have a really good balance. In particular, we always have at least one of us who, whether we believe it or not, can hold the opposite side of a decision so that we all can think through it all, which is really helpful. We vote, but we do like to get to pretty much full consensus, or at least we said okay, I don't really agree, but I'm going to support this, and we always, face out the board has decided, things like that. So that's the size of our board. As far as the fall goes, I'll start by saying we have not made a solid decision yet. Here in Rhode Island, we've been surrounded by hotspots, and so there are a lot stronger restrictions here currently than in other places, and it doesn't look like there'll be a lot of freedom in the near future. So we are in the process and talking all the time about it. So we're starting with what are our state regulations, because the other part of it is it's very interesting to hear Angela say what she said about, like, if somebody's got a tummy bug, all bets are off, right? We have a real large variety of types of homeschoolers and where their interests and tolerances are. So, we might have some families who are very much like that, and we do have a sizable amount of families who have kids with special needs and special medical needs. And then we also have all the way down the other end to, like, homeschoolers who, I shouldn't say homeschoolers, unschoolers who have a very different feeling about immunity and being together, whatever. So we thought, well, we got to start with state. So our state requirements are really pretty strict. They're going to require masks, 6 feet of, for everyone over the age of 2, 6 feet of social distancing, and only groups of 15. And as homeschoolers know, that's like 2-3 families. Sometimes it's 1.5 families. So that's a really hard part of our planning for the fall. Even if we continue to progress well health-wise as a state, the next level is still mass social distancing and groups of 50. So the state requirements are one of the first places we've been talking about and researching. The second is our insurance, because we obviously have concern about that, not just for the fall, but even as we've moved more to a virtual world, making sure that we've got the right insurance for meeting our family's needs in that way. Another place is our mission statement. Obviously, if we have to cancel things or things are going to be on hold or whatever, how do we meet the mission statement in different ways, in more creative ways? And then the other major thing we've thought about is, so if we have restrictions, state restrictions, like 15 people and masks and all that, even if we agree to do small group meetups, we're a 100% volunteer organization. So are our volunteer leaders comfortable holding those rules? And this has been a really big piece for us, because nobody likes parenting other people's kids or parenting other parents or being the rule keeper. Like, I mean, we're all kind of rule breakers in our own way, right? And so we're definitely in a lot of conversation about that and talking to our leading. We have a second sort of level that we call directors, and they're the ones who are running programs and are sort of a designated leader at a spot. And so talking to them about, well, where is your comfort level, and insisting that kids keep their masks on or they don't touch each other, or if they start to, can you step in and handle this? And so even if we can follow all the rules, that's one of the big concerns we have about asking our volunteers to take on that level of responsibility too. Mm-hmm. So those are all the pieces of where we're gathering and researching and talking, but we haven't come to a solid decision about what the fall is going to look like at all yet. Soon, though.
Yeah, thank you. Boy, I decided I don't want to go to Rhode Island. You guys have a hard time. Amanda's still in. Is Ohio better? No. Let's talk about your board. How big is it, and what do you consider when making decisions, or how does your board go about making decisions?
Okay, so we have a 6-member board. We actually have 1 open position on our board right now. So normally we would have 7. It's each, I'm going to make this, I'm going to start with simple. Each board meeting, we read our mission statement. And we do that at the very beginning because we want everybody to stay focused on our mission. And our mission is we are a community of students and families who desire to glorify God by uplifting, encouraging, equipping, and supporting home educating families to disciple young men and women of character, influencing the world for Jesus Christ. I told you it was long. um, but we are definitely a religious, faith-based group. So we start with that mission statement, and then that kind of helps guide our conversation. Once you're starting with, what are we here for? What is our purpose? I don't know if you can hear this. I live in Ohio. There's a tractor going by outside, sorry. But then we, just run our basic board meeting with like reviewing minutes, our committee reports, things like that. New businesses always last, and COVID-19 would be new business. And usually what we're going to do with that is, first of all, our board is a safe place. We are friends. We are all on the same team. We can say what we think in our board meeting without the filter that we might use somewhere else. And know that that's not going to leave that room, that we can share our feelings. We're human beings. Your board members are human beings. You're a human being. As a support group leader, you're a human being. And you have feelings about this too. You have a family that has feelings about this. And, just being able to share that. We are the kind of board that we talk till we agree. And if we can't agree, we put a pin in it and we come back. So when we share something, it's consensus, and we've heard all the opinions, and our board is very diverse. We come from different backgrounds. We have large families with many kids. We have one mom that's only got a couple kids. It's different homeschooling styles, different parenting styles, different political leanings. We have those on our board, and that makes us a really strong board because we represent our co-op well that way. With COVID-19, one of the things that we did is, and we've actually had this, I don't know if you guys remember when Ebola was a big thing years ago, we had a nurse that we knew that is actually a school nurse that we consulted, and she gave us some advice. And so we have retained her as a consultant when things like this come up. And in homeschool world, things like this come up, like vaccines have come up in our co-op before. So we just kind of wanted to talk to her and see what she had to say about this. That was one part of this. We actually are in kind of a unique situation because we're blessed with a really large building. So our classrooms are like 1,000 square feet. So social distancing in a classroom isn't hard for us. Because, our class sizes are limited to 15 or 16 kids anyways. Well, in 1,000 square feet, that's nothing, you're good. So one of the things that I did want to think about though is thinking back before we rented this building. We've actually been in this building for 5 years. We used to be in a church building, and our decision-making process was a lot different when we were in a church building. The rooms were smaller, and our board was accountable to a board of trustees at the church. And so we couldn't just make decisions and inform them what we were going to do in the building. We really had to cooperate with them. We actually had somebody from the church that was in the church leadership that came to our board meetings and sat with us and kind of talked through things with us. That was super helpful, keeping those relationships close. But, I can see how meeting in a church building or a building that's run like that, you might have trouble meeting. Because we rent our building, we have a different sort of situation now. One of the things that we just kind of try and keep in mind is we are not a school, so we do not have to follow all of the CDC guidelines for public schools, and some of them sound really good and some of them sound like overkill. And then also, we are a religious group, so we would be exempt in Ohio from some of these guidelines for like large group meetings. But, and I say this very clearly, but we want our families to be safe. So we've really worked with our school nurse person to help us kind of figure out what those guidelines should be and get some of those in place, and what the recommendations are and how those might work for our group. And then we've just published those things early. Like we've tried to publish them early and then talk about it a lot with our group. So we had some guidelines published in March, like here's what we think in March. And then we've come back in April, and then we come back in May and say, here are the changes. Here's what we're looking at for events that we had scheduled, and just try to be really upfront and talk a lot about it with our group. Publish early and often so they know what to expect.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Amanda. Wow. I hope you guys who are listening are picking up some tidbits of helpful information there. Let's go on and talk a little bit about some tools that maybe your group can use for planning, although the panel has already shared some great tools like bringing in expert advice and trying to reach consensus and listening to everybody's views and things like that. When we're faced with the unknown, it's usually helpful to draw up different scenarios, and your board might draw up a best case, a worst case, and a most likely case, although like Amanda Campbell in Rhode Island was saying, we really don't know yet what we're facing. Or you might just want to say option 1, option 2, option 3, whatever you want to call those things, but come up with different options. That's one way of making decisions. It's actually, different plans. It's a little more time consuming than just saying you have one plan. You might have 3 plans depending upon best case, worst case, most likely case. Another tool I want to show you that was used a lot when I was in homeschool leadership, and I use it still a lot in my personal life, is called a decision matrix. You can find this over on my website, homeschoolcpa.com/decision matrix. I just posted a blog post about it where I share this spreadsheet, but the idea is if you have different options, and here it's a homeschool group trying to decide what activities they can do in the fall, field trips, support group meetings, something new like a matching or a mentoring program, co-ops, online classes. Those are different activities they're thinking about offering. And then they put down the rows the criteria of how they're going to determine if this particular option is a good one or not. And they have different criteria, and your criteria will be different, but I appreciated so much what Amanda Sillen was saying is top of the criteria is the health and safety of your family. So one of your first decision criteria in this time period might be, is this activity have a low risk of spreading a virus? In another time, that wasn't even on our radar, but now it is. There might be other criteria, and then you rank them and you score them with numbers, add up the numbers and see how they come out. So this tool is helpful because it's very visual to see and weigh things. It takes out some of the personal agenda or the subjectivity of it, makes it a little more objective. I think I've got those defined right. But anyway, it takes out some of the emotion is what I'm saying. It's a very visual and mathematical way to come to a decision. In this case, the in-person co-op classes score the lowest because they have, they scored so low on the first and the criteria of spreading disease. They score very low there. Makes sense, right? You can change this up a little bit if you want to. And again, over at homeschoolcpa.com/decision matrix, you can get the spreadsheet, change anything on it you want, including the criteria, but you could put a weighting factor because not all these criteria are equal. Maybe being popular with members should not be equal to ease of finding a location, right? Or the low risk of spreading the virus, right? So in this particular case, you can give it any of these criteria different weights based on how important your board thinks they are. And you might come up with different decisions, different scoring and things like that. Unfortunately, in this case, the in-person co-op classes still lose, but what looks really popular is a matching program, matching experience moms with newbies, okay? Because it just scores high on so many factors. So anyway, I'm not going to talk much more about that. You can go to the website and see and try to use something like this tool to help you decide between different alternatives in a less emotional way than everybody just stating their opinion. I found it very helpful. All right, back to our panel. Well, so I got to find these things. Let's talk about, if you want to, you've already shared a little bit, but best, worst, most likely cases, or any tools like that decision matrix your board might use. Amanda Campbell in Rhode Island, let's start with you this time. Do you have anything like this that your board has found helpful?
It's funny, when you first published this the other day, one of my board members who isn't very into numbers and charting shared it with all of us, and another one who is was like, "Oh, I love these!" So we'll use it.
Amanda,
and
I have an engineering background. That's why. That's the engineer in me coming out.
So it's fun. So it gets used in our board. Some people have more value for it than others, but those sorts of things do get used. And that's what's really cool about having a board of really diverse women, is that we each bring something really different and help each other see things differently, which is cool. Best, worst, middle, I don't know, a miracle is the best. And poof, somebody has a magic wand. I don't know. Best case would, I don't know how could ever be possible, but would be to go right back to last year was our biggest, most productive year. We were running 4 co-ops in 4 locations. Like we named them as campuses, like with different places with very different themes, and really successful performing arts program for the first time. So that would be lovely to have again. I don't think it's in our future for a year, but I do think it's important that we hold it as the future. Like we will get back to that, and we have the resources and we have the interest and the volunteers to make it happen when we can. We spent the last 2 years both financially and energetically putting a lot into building an amazing preschool program. We've had a very big surge in never want a school families who, when they have 3-year-olds, are clear that they want to homeschool. And so we sort of invested in that, and that we've been talking about is one of the things that we really have to sort of put away. It goes to your point earlier, Carol, about it's okay to not be able to meet everyone's needs. I have an almost 5-year-old, and watching over the last 3 months little kids try to connect over Zoom. First it's cute, and then it's not, and then they just don't want to engage. They're not capable, really. And so yeah, it's sad to say, oh, we have these families who either it's like mine, who's the youngest, or the stuff for the bigger ones, or they're new members who really want to be active and involved in a lot of energy, that we're just not going to be able to meet their needs for a little while, but that'll change. So worst case is nothing happens. And I mean, the truth is that could be our reality. We could make the decision, and we've been tossing around, what if we have no in-person programming till the new year? The facilities that we mostly rent are boys and girls clubs, so they will probably be used as secondary childcare. The school year might not fully open in the fall. And so the places that we rent are going to become backups to the school. Plus, they have DCYF requirements around how they have to clean before kids can come in, which are now even more stringent because of COVID. So they don't look really possible. So we've been talking about, well, okay, this is more of the likely category. What if we do some outside, everybody gets their picnic blanket 8 feet away from each other, you got your masks on, and we play charades? I don't know, right? Like something connect. And that's a likely thing, but we still get stuck with things like the number of people who can gather in one space, and also bathroom facilities. How do we manage that? So I think, you know, that's our like best case is magic. Worst case is, and I say worst case is nothing, but it's not really nothing, because if we choose that, if that's the route we go, we will do other things. We will find ways to connect more virtually. And we talk about that a lot too. You know, we don't want to put our energy or our efforts into becoming something else like Outschool. We don't have to spend our time or technology to do that. But to meet the real needs of both our mission and our members is how do we help families connect and meaningfully connect during a time where there's no other way to connect. And we've been talking about small pods too in that likely category, is how do we, this sounds a little silly, but I don't know how else to say. We're talking about how do we be like Match.com for our families? Like how do we help our families find other similar families who then can trust each other for, let's say, 3 months to only meet with themselves. Sort of like expanding your quarantine circle a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the likelies that we talk about as well. So we wouldn't necessarily be hosting or putting them under our umbrella to meet, but if we can help our families connect and meet their needs in that way, those are also some of our likely middle ground ideas and things we're talking about.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. That's a lot of food for thought. Angela Taylor in Texas, talk to us about maybe some of the scenarios you've talked through, and maybe some tools you use for planning if you have them on your board.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to jump right to most likely, because most likely it's what's going to happen. Most likely we're going to just have classes as normal. It'll just have lower attendance, and we're going to have to focus really hard on cleaning protocols and just good hygiene really at our co-op. That's what's most likely going to happen as far as us meeting together in the fall. Some of the planning tools that we're kind of putting together just in case there's a worst case scenario, but also that will just kind of set us up for future success, is we applied to be able to have the Google Education Suite, the G Suite for education. So we've got that set up because that was something we didn't have before going into this. We had always used Zoom because we have online classes apart from our regular co-op days. So we set that up so that there's just a easy way for everybody to communicate in one place, because that was something that we weren't prepared for before. We had teachers who were doing a great job communicating as much as they could, but they were communicating all over the place. It was like Facebook message or email or to the website or just all over, and parents were really having a difficult time keeping up with the communication. So we'll have that set in place for the fall where everything is in one place. Other than that, like I said, we'll continue with Zoom, worst case scenario, or even so, one of the things that we are doing is that because we put in a strict sick policy, a stricter sick policy than what we've had in the past. We're going to ask our teachers in our core classes to live Zoom their classes in class as the day is happening, just for our core classes. So that way parents don't feel like they have to send their kids sick, or they send them because they just really need to get that geometry class in, and they don't want their kids to fall behind. They'll be able to watch the class from home. So we're going to try that, see if it works, and revise if it doesn't. But that's
great. Thanks for sharing that. Amanda Sillen, what would you like to encourage leaders with about how you make up scenarios?
Yeah. So, best case is probably not going to happen. Worst case is probably not going to happen. So what's most likely? And we just really looked at trying to accommodate. This is going to be around for a little while. And we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to keep everybody safe and healthy. We did look at the Ohio guidance. I saw a comment by Darren Jones of HSLDA, so I was super happy to see that about the Ohio guidelines. and basically just asking about, you know, what they said. I would be happy to send him a copy of them so he can give me his perspective on it. But I'm pretty sure that Ohio is exempt as religious groups and entities. It specifically says religious groups and entities. So that's one of the things that we use as our planning tools, was that guidance from the state of Ohio. And from the CDC with our school nurse, that was something that we used. For us, that really does look, you know, a lot like Texas. We're doing more frequent cleanings. We're doing smaller classroom sizes. We did have to look again at our policy on illness, and there are a couple extra things that is being recommended in Ohio, as far as like asking if people have a fever or things like that, or if you've had a fever, asking people to affirm that they haven't traveled out of the state, things like that. And then we had to write a policy about refunds, you know, because if you get halfway through a semester and we have to stop classes, when would we refund and when would we not refund, and what does that look like? So we really just kind of had to consider all of those different aspects.
That's great, very helpful. Our lovely moderator of the chat room is telling us there are some questions popping up, especially when Angela mentioned G Suite. So let me tell you, if we don't get to your question, or it's not having to do with, you know, planning an uncertain future like G Suite, Angela's part of the I Am a Homeschool group leader on Facebook. She'd be happy, I'm sure, speaking for you, Angela, but post your question on the Facebook group, and other leaders or Angela can pop in there and try to answer those kinds of questions not really related to what we're focusing on tonight. Okay, so folks, there's another vehicle for you to ask those kinds of off-topic questions. All right, we're gonna move on to the next topic, which some of you already kind of covered, which is social distancing in a homeschool program. I think it was Amanda, you were the one who said you got huge classrooms, so it's easier for you. Angela Taylor in Texas doesn't have as many requirements, and poor Amanda Campbell in Rhode Island, you're just shaking your head like, I don't know, I don't know what we're gonna do. But I have heard many times already and want to reiterate that, of course, the key concern is the safety of your members. And do exactly what Amanda in Ohio was just saying. Find out what your state local guidelines are. Maybe you form a committee who studies that, so you know, you as the leader don't take on everything. Look and ask what your church, if you meet in a church, or your landlord or your host guidelines are. Some of the panelists already referred to that. You know, we've been talking to the place we rent from about what their requirements are going to be for cleanliness. Have an illness policy. If you don't already have one, go and please share your policy on what illnesses are. And I think one of the panelists said how they had to beef up their policy even. Please go ahead and share it on the Facebook group, the I Am a Homeschool Group Leader Facebook group. In the file section, just put your, you know, name it something so we can find it, such and such organization illness policy, so other leaders can benefit from reading illness policies and then benefit and maybe make their own. Know your host sanitizing requirements. If you've not already met with them, this is the time to start meeting with them and say, what are you going to require from us, so you can even determine if your group can comply going forward. Social distancing. So I read this article not long ago, just May 23rd. It was written by NPR. It was called From Camping to Dining Out, How Experts Rate the Risks of 14 Summer Activities. And what I liked there was a doctor referenced in the article talked about 4 criteria you need to consider when you try to determine if you can comply with social distancing requirements. And the first is the length of time that your group is together. You know, maybe just moms meeting for 1 hour is not a problem, but a 3-hour, 6-hour co-op day is obviously a very different story. The space that you have, Amanda Sillen said they're in Ohio, she's not concerned because her space is big. The co-op, the church that my co-op met in, we definitely had space constraints. The number of people involved, Amanda Campbell already talked about in Rhode Island, its groups very small, you know, 15, maybe going only slightly higher in the future. And then indoors or outdoors. So I'm in Ohio, like Amanda. We're looking forward to the summer because that's when we can meet outside. And poor Angela in Texas is like, no, summer's when we go in. We're outside in the winter. So think about whether you can be indoor or outdoor. So these are just some things to think about as you figure out, can we even offer this program because of these kinds of constraints and social distancing. Dear panel, do you want to share anything else about your social distancing? I'll just ask one of you to physically raise your hand who wants to go first, and I'll call on you. Yep, go ahead, Amanda. Amanda in Ohio. Yep, unmute yourself and tell us what you are thinking about.
So one thing that we are doing that was recommended by our school nurse consultant person was changing the dates that we meet. Normally we wouldn't start until after Labor Day, and we would meet all the way through until mid-December. And she said, you know, you're going to overlap flu season, and there's no way to tell the difference between this and the flu. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. But a nurse thinks like that. And so she's like, back yourself up, get out of there before Thanksgiving. So we're starting mid-August this year, and we're going to be done by Thanksgiving. And then we're going to reevaluate what to do for the spring semester after the flu season. But that was just one thing. Most of the other things that we put in place were things from like the Ohio guidance that we received. Things like sanitizing more often, asking people to keep 6 feet of distance, encouraging families to sit together in family groups at lunchtime, things like that. Whereas normally you would just commingle. I mean, you wouldn't even worry about it. But all of the rest of our stuff, I think, would have been in those Ohio guidelines. But that one was not. So, yeah, that was the only extra idea that really I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. We should do that.
Thank you. Angela Taylor, do you have anything to add? You kind of touched on that already.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add. I mean, the only thing that we changed with our sick policy this particular semester is that we were very specific of having people, we created a form where they actually had to check off each one. So, and basically it was listed all out, but they basically, it was, to summarize, if you think you have it, don't come. If you've been in contact with somebody, don't come. But, you know, we listed it out point by point, and we made them check a little mark, just, you know, just a little bit more, so that we thought maybe they actually looked at it a little bit more closely to know what we're expecting from them. Everything else is exactly what Amanda said, so.
Great. Amanda Campbell in Rhode Island, do you have anything to add?
So I'll just add that we have a parent who is a family doc who we also, as a board, conference with him, basically. In fact, we shut down a week before the rest of the world seemed to have, thanks to him. And we took a lot of flack that week, actually, and then everybody was kind of like, oh, good thing. So it was very, it was really good for those of us on the board to feel like we had a real resource. And so, again, we have plans to connect and talk with him and check in from time to time. I will just back up and say we also last year really beefed up our sick policy, as well as got very forceful about reminding people of it through the year. It was a bad flu season here last year, and so almost weekly we would make some sort of statement or reminder about what the policy was, and, you know, we'll bring your art home to you or whatever it is, right? Like, to make it okay to not come. We also had teachers who would be sick out, and we would Zoom them in. We did that a couple of times. I'm not sure it was fantastic, but it was good. It was okay. Mm-hmm. So I think those things are really important. And then I'll just say personally, I am someone who's comfortable with difficult conversations. So when we've had people who sort of push the issue or are consistently breaking policy, I do contact them. And I'm not school marmy about it, but I try to come from a place of, we're a community, I'm concerned about you, your community is concerned about you, let's talk about what the policy is and why. And I think that that's important, that as leaders, if we're going to have guidelines, that we are able to talk about them with our community as a community. So that's my bit.
That's good. Thank you. All right, we are going to take a little bit of time for Q&A, and I do want to remind folks that, and you've already posted lots of questions, so I probably should have said this early on, but Q&A with our panelists. Our panelists are not medical experts. Our panelists are not legal experts. Our panelists are not experts on your group, and they're not able to predict the future, obviously. So, Doreen, let's unmute yourself and see what people have asked. I know there's a bunch already, so Doreen's got the very challenging job of figuring out which ones to ask our panel. And panel, I'll just let you raise your hand, unmute yourself, and answer.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, so we have a lot of great questions coming in. Here, a couple of folks have asked this question. What are you all doing about a deadline to make decisions for what you're doing for the fall? And how are you handling money and managing a timeline? How are you giving your families, your teachers, time to respond to whatever your decision is?
That's a really good question. Go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, I'll start there because today was our registration day. So for our co-op, and we did that because we didn't want to be scrambling at the end of the summer. So, you know, it takes a lot to plan for a semester. So we decided we'd rather plan for it and scrap it all than to be scrambling at the very end. But we did not take any money. So we asked them to register for classes just so we could get an idea of what people's thoughts were on whether they were going to come back, how they were feeling about it, you know, just to get a feel for what our numbers might look like. And we won't collect any money until pretty close to when we go back. And we've never done that before. And it is a little risky to wait to do that, just as far as, you know, people's commitment levels. But we just didn't want to spend, you know, a solid 2 or 3 weeks just trying to push it all in together. So we're not collecting anything, but we are planning as though we're moving forward.
Makes life easier on your treasurer when she doesn't have to worry about making those refunds or partial refunds.
Right, and that was it too, is we didn't want to refund any money. So.
Yeah, I have a heart for treasurers. Amanda in Ohio, Amanda, Rhode Island, do you have anything you want to add to try to answer that question? We've got more questions.
We did something similar. Our registration software allows us to collect information and take deposits without taking all the money. So it's really easy to refund when it's all through software and you just go click refund. And if we need to do that, and our registration opened today. So yeah, I mean, we're there.
What software are you using? Let's give them a plug.
RegFox, and if you want to use it though, I get a $200 credit and you get a $200 credit. So I will give you a code that you can use if you want to use it.
Put that on the Facebook group or
yeah.
All right. Amanda
Awesome.
Campbell, do you want to weigh in on that question? Or do you want to wait for another one? Okay. All right, go ahead, Doreen.
Okay. I think you might have kind of answered this in a couple different ways with the emphasis on a board decision and communicating that as a board decision. But what if you have the opposite problem of people minimizing health recommendations? Have you had that experience? Have you dealt with that? What are your suggestions?
Anybody want to tackle that one?
I don't know about minimizing it, but we have people who just are anti-government and so don't want anything to do with what the CDC has to say. So there's that.
And your response to that then is?
Good question.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, right now our response to everything is we don't know, maybe, we'll see, we're not sure what's going to happen in 2.5 months. There's a lot of that kind of response of just a lot of wait and see, because we're not even going to meet again for a few months. So it's kind of, we're going to put the policies in place now, and everybody knows those are not going to be the policies that are going to, you know, come September.
Okay. If you have teachers who are paid for employees.
Hang on a sec, Doreen. Amanda, did you want to weigh in on that question? Amanda Campbell, you unmuted yourself. Did you want to weigh in on how to do it?
I would just say that I think this is the reason to have good handbooks and procedures written ahead of time, because for us, it's part of our registration process. So when you register, you're agreeing to the handbook or whatever. So if you don't like it, don't register, and it's still an issue because homeschoolers are not typically rule followers, right? But it's how we try to handle that ahead of time.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. None of you are attorneys, but are any of you concerned about lawsuits? Has that crossed the mind of the board?
Go ahead, Amanda, in Ohio.
So we actually talked to our insurance company about this because we were concerned with personal liability. If we were to meet, could we be sued and would we be covered? Our insurance company told us that as a religious group, and they focus on insuring religious groups, that they would cover us. We actually do have the higher coverage of, it's like board member protection or something like that, where it actually insures each board member individually. There's no way I would do this without good insurance coverage, not a chance. So just because of the society that we live in, whether you're talking about COVID-19 or something else, having that insurance coverage gives me some peace of mind in being able to walk forward and make those decisions. So.
Thank you. Amanda Campbell, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't want anyone I know to do this job without proper support. And having been through this is in my 2 years, this is our third, like the pandemic being our third major traumatic event that involves needing legal extra background. And I will say I'm grateful that we've always had really good board liability insurance. I this week have spent a lot of time back and forth with our insurance agent to ask more specifically about COVID and also about more online concerns, things like if someone were to expose themselves to kids on a Zoom class, that kind of thing, like, are we liable? And so what I've learned is that our general liability covers an awful lot of all of that, but we do have an exemption for the virus. So one of our discussions this week will be like, how much do we want to look into purchasing more insurance to cover that? Or the other thing we're looking into is adding by registering, you assume responsibility, knowing that you put yourself at risk for whatever, that kind of a statement, and where to put that and how to put it in. So those sorts of things are things that we're looking into as we consider making our decisions about what we're going to do too.
It was really good. Thank you. Doreen, another question?
Yes, a couple of people have asked, what, if anything, are you all doing to prepare for a potential influx of homeschool families for your groups and co-ops?
Excellent question. Go ahead, Amanda Campbell.
All right. So given that there's a high likelihood that there may not be school here in the fall and that kids will continue to do distance learning, which apparently no one really loves, we are very concerned about a major influx in the fall of what we're kind of referring to as either crisis homeschoolers or temporary homeschoolers. Not to say that a sizable amount of them may fall in love with having their kids at home and want to go this route. And in particular, we've been talking about how we sort of also suspect a lot of kids with special needs, because those, even if the kids do go back to school, they're also cutting all music, art, phys ed, and special needs programming up here for the school. So that also is going to push more people to homeschool. So we're both concerned about continuing to meet the needs of our active, consistent members who are homeschoolers at heart and have real needs, and we want to meet them with all these changes, as well as properly support and help new homeschoolers regardless of how they got to us. For us, our advocacy team is a huge part of that. They do a lot they do what we call Homeschooling 101 free meetings. We've done them at libraries every month forever, and now they're doing them on Zoom. Those are getting larger, much larger. We also have a Homeschooling 102, I think we call it, for high school. So helping families more with how to put together a transcript and things like that. But we've also been talking about how do we do like small topic video training. So in particular, my vice president and I are starting to create small short videos of, first of all, how does the organization work? What is homeschooling? But also, how do I register for an event? And who do I contact if my school's giving me a hard time? And how do I make friends? And how do I figure out what curriculum to pick? And all those things that new people who are coming into this with zero previous information or reading or knowledge are going to be asking. We're very concerned about our current leaders getting burned out fast, basically just answering questions, the same sort of questions over and over again. So that's sort of our summer project, is to make
I will point out, Amanda,
mini videos.
Your group is a little unique in that you're almost more of a statewide organization, really. And many of the, like Ohio statewide organizations kind of already have some of those basic questions that new people interested in homeschooling ask. And it sounds like you're kind of catching up and using great technology with doing video shorts. That's great.
Yeah, we're going to try.
Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in on that question? What about an influx of temporary homeschoolers or crisis homeschoolers? Can you accommodate them?
I don't know if we have really thought a lot about how that's going to change our organization, but one of the things we did when we had a little extra time over the course of these last few months is kind of really clarify our statement of faith. So that way people who are coming in, they knew exactly what it is that we stood for, so that there wasn't any confusion, because we've struggled with that in the past. So I think that is going to, that's all, you know, as a Christian organization, we really are concerned about, is that those who are coming in hold to the same overall belief system as us, you know, not denominationally driven, but just a general statement of faith. But that's it. That's the only thing that we've really done to prepare. And it wasn't really in response to this. It just kind of is going to be helpful going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Did you want to weigh in, Amanda, or should we take another question?
The only thing I would add to both of those things is just we've structured our registration to allow our returning members to register first, because it is that online program, and then we're going to open up to new members, because we do want to serve all that we can, but we know that we can't serve everybody. And I've read some articles that are projecting like a 600% increase in homeschooling. We couldn't take 6 times the number of homeschoolers in our group because of what we're trying to do. So we're just trying to serve the people that are here already, and then bring in as many more as we can help. We'll help.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to hold the questions for the end and get back to our regular scheduled program. You all have already shared a little bit about some of the ideas, what you're thinking about doing in the fall. Here's a couple thoughts I had. When you assess what people really need, and I think Amanda Campbell, you kind of touched on this, maybe I heard you say this, that there are real needs versus felt needs, and you probably want to address more of the real needs that your your families have, your members have, and the real need for connection, for encouragement, and for support. Sometimes I think our families think, I need a class for my kid. I need someone to help me homeschool this child. You know, I need biology dissection. That's a felt need. But the real need is, no, you need encouragement and support that you can help your child learn biology dissection, for example. So, you know, the content of what to school and how to homeschool is easily available everywhere, right? There's almost too much content, too many choices of homeschooling, even online classes. Your group doesn't have to offer them. They're available somewhere else. But connection mom to mom, that's what's harder to find. And that is what is not available anywhere. So I think you, Amanda Campbell in Rhode Island, were talking about trying like a match.com for homeschool families. I love that idea. So let's if we can, with the restrictions that we might have to live under, let's not forget about Mom's Night Out and include the newbies. Or how about the good old-fashioned support group meetings, some of which have died, you know, in the past few years. They might need to be resurrected at this time. Again, it's easier to meet with just adults than try to accommodate kids. I think if you take care of mom, the kids will be taken care of. So my heart is to try to take care of mom, and maybe you can offer things like field trips, and again, including the newbies. So that was this slide was prepared over a week ago, but it led in very easily as an answer to what Doreen was asking. All these things are ways you can accommodate new to homeschooling folks, even if they can't attend some of your programs or your in-person classes because you're full or restricted. So when you're thinking about what you can offer in the fall, I think someone else just said, consider longer breaks. I've heard this before, like either delaying the start or quitting by Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think Amanda in Ohio, you mentioned that. Small groups, maybe they meet in homes, not the larger groups, inside, outside, online. We've talked about that. And also different offerings for the different ages. Obviously, like I think Amanda Campbell said, it's really hard to do online connections with young children, but the junior and senior highs can handle that. So maybe you can only offer some online learning for the older kids, and unfortunately not as much programming for the youngers. That's just the way it is, and that's okay if that's what you have to do. Do we have anything that you all want to add to your panel on any ideas or changes that you're considering? You can talk about that, and then we're going to talk about the final thing about how to communicate your plan to your members. So any ideas, changes that you want to add to what you've already shared?
I don't have anything to add. I think I kind of shared everything that that's fine.
Your ideas, thank you. Either Amanda? We've covered a lot, I think, but okay, you good? All right, let's go back to our final topic is, how are you communicating this plan to your members? You know, have you ever heard of the 7 touches? That in marketing, people who do marketing to us as consumers realize that a consumer needs to hear about a product up to 7 times before they will purchase. So you might want to think about that aspect of human nature when you try to communicate something to your members. You might have to do it 7 times, okay? Like you might need to send an email more than once, a Facebook post several times, put it on your website, which is good, but not everybody goes to visit your website, so then you need to retell them there's something on the website via text, IMing, maybe Facebook Live if you've never done that. Maybe good old-fashioned phone calls, and maybe some of you use messaging apps or ways to communicate with your group as a whole, but please communicate over and over and over again, many times, what your plans are and if the plans have to change. Let's see, panel, tell me about how you are communicating your plans at this point with your members, or what you plan, how you plan to communicate. Who's going to start us off? Go ahead, Amanda Sillen, go ahead.
Well, so we have been communicating, you know, through our Facebook group and just posting things out, and through our email loop. Another way that we're communicating that is on their registration. We've tried to include all of the COVID information as well as all of the information about our co-op, so that they have to read down through all of this information. There's waivers that are linked that they can download and then re-upload. when they're completed, and then they have to sign it. And so we're really just trying to communicate, just like what you said, in a multiple ways, and just kind of communicate early, communicate often, and also just being open to listen. It doesn't mean that anything's going to change, but I'm here to listen. I feel the same frustrations a lot of these other parents are feeling. And that is the support group part of this that I think a lot of people are needing, is just to know that, you know, it's going to look different this year, but we're going to get through it. It's going to go back to how it was, hopefully. And we can just listen and, you know, understand as much as we can and try to move forward with compassion for each other and support. So that would just be what we're doing, and how I would say as a support group leader to try and engage with your membership. We have people that are passionately like, we should not be meeting, there's no meeting. And then we have people that are passionately like, this is a hoax, we're all meeting. And we're just kind of in the middle trying to find this good ground where we can help as many people as we can. So.
Thank you. Amanda Campbell, did you have your hand up? You want to share how you try to communicate?
So we historically have communicated mostly through Facebook and email, but what we've found since COVID first hit is that a lot of our members have either disengaged from Facebook because it's too much, or we also haven't been as active because we don't have a million things to post and tell you about. Remember, don't come with sniffles and all that stuff. I think our Facebook algorithms have also changed. And so even when we are sharing and people are still on Facebook, they're not necessarily seeing our posts.
Oh no.
And I think that's an important thing to remember. So we are trying to do, like you said, 7 ways, whatever, multiple emails, and trying to be a little more active on Facebook and create more community on Facebook. I think a lot of us were in a stunned place for a while, and so there was a real hole in our community. People weren't even, that normally are very active, weren't very active. And so I feel like we almost have to start again with like building a Facebook algorithm with our membership board, or our membership. So that's an interesting thing. The other thing that we will probably do when we finally make a decision is to host a town hall, and we'll do it obviously via Zoom, but to be able to communicate not just in writing through Facebook and email, but that verbal communication for a lot of people. I'm one of those people. I'd much rather have a conversation and be able to talk it out. It's not going to be, it's up for change or discussion, but like, how can we explain to you how we came to this decision? We also, as a board, have spent a lot of energy working on trying to be more and more transparent in our process and our decision making. So I think the point of the town hall is also to be that, to be able to say, this is how we came to this decision, so that we aren't, the board who makes the decisions, I'm just a homeschool mom trying to work it out too, but to help people understand the decision-making process and all that we did to get there. And then also to invite them, encourage them to be part of how we be creative about moving forward and connecting in new ways, because I don't pretend to know all the answers. Our other leaders and our members are going to come up with great ideas too. And so we hope that they'll engage with us that way.
That's good. Thank you. Angela, did you want to add anything there about communicating?
We're doing basically the same kind of things. We have a town hall scheduled right before we ask our members to pay at the end of July. So we wanted to have that discussion with them once we were closer to our start date, just so that way we can answer any questions, because hopefully we'll know more information about what our requirements are, what the guidelines that our host church has set down along with our city. And then we want to discuss that with them and allow people the opportunity to, at that point, say, okay, we're a go, or yeah, we're going to sit this one out. So yeah, that's how.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing all that. We are wrapping up and heading into final Q&A if our panelists would be so gracious to stay around a little bit longer. Again, I want to remind you, the Facebook group, I am a homeschool group leader. If you didn't get your questions answered, we'll take a few more, but if it's off topic or something, pop it over there. And we've got 1,400 leaders that might help answer it, not just our 3 panelists, wonderful as they've been. And a reminder, someone already asked about, what was that mentoring program again that Homeschool CPA is trying to help mentor folks to help homeschool leaders. You can find out information at homeschoolcpa.com/mentoring. So we're going to take some final Q&A here, and Doreen can come back on and ask some questions. Again, remembering our dear panelists, who we thank very much, but they're not the medical experts, legal experts, certainly not experts in your group, nor are they predictors of the future. So Doreen, I bet there's more questions, aren't there?
There are all kinds of questions, Carol. I'm going to try and pick some that are more common. Have any of you drilled down to the level of how you would actually organize your classrooms if you are meeting in person? For example, handling supplies, having students sit, distance. I think Amanda Sillen talked about gathering for meals and things like that. But, and also, will you be managing the younger set, the K through 2? They have more challenges, I assume.
Okay. So anybody drilled down that far yet, or is that something you're putting off for later in the summer? Anybody want to answer? Go ahead, Amanda Sillen.
A little bit. That's a little bit. So organizing classrooms, our classrooms are fairly large. So, I mean, we are spacing desks 6 feet apart. We actually had to get some desks because the desks that we had in our classrooms were really large and made for 2 students at a desk. And so, and we own all of our furniture. It was donated, but it's ours. So we actually had to go buy some furniture, which was a first, to get smaller desks that could be spaced out so kids wouldn't be sitting right beside each other. I know in Ohio, the rules are a little bit different for younger kids that are like preschool age, but I'm not super familiar with them. And it's something that we're still working on. One of the things that we are doing is frequent cleaning. We've already talked to teachers about at the end of your class, the last 5 minutes of your class, we have spray that is a 3% peroxide spray, which everybody likes that spray. I never knew that there were such strong opinions about Lysol in my life, but there are. And so like using this like 3% peroxide spray is like approved by the CDC and also approved by the Crunchy Moms. And so we're like, this is great. And so just wiping down all the desks at the end of class as students leave, spraying down things like markers and scissors and stuff like that. When all of this started, my son runs a landscaping company, and somebody said, what's the weirdest thing you've had to sterilize? And he said, well, if anybody lays down a chainsaw, you have to spray it when you lay it down, and you have to spray it before you pick it back up. And I'm like, that is so crazy. Your Lysol, your chainsaw. But you know, it is stuff like that you have to really think about.
Amanda, someone's asking, what is the name of that spray?
Peroxide, hydrogen peroxide. You get it at the store in a brown bottle. Oh, it's just regular hydrogen peroxide, and you just spray it, and then you can get. We have a mom that handles all of this. It's not me. I like Lysol, but we have another mom that handles all this, and she gets like this stronger version of this, and she mixes a cup of hydrogen peroxide with a gallon of water, and it makes it 3% hydrogen peroxide, and then it's safe to use around people. So
Google it. Google
that. Please don't take my advice. But yeah, things like that. We've struggled with lunchtime. Really, because our gymnasium is about 3,000 square feet, and we have sometimes we have up to 100 families. And when you say 75 families and you're talking about a co-op, that can be 200 kids easy. And so then thinking, how do you fit 200 kids into 3,000 square feet? Well, folks, you don't. Not during COVID-19, you don't. So we've talked about inviting people to go to lunch in their cars, eat outside, spaced out. Basically telling people that we're going to split lunch so that you can't eat everybody in the cafeteria, or even doing lunch in classrooms, which I hate because it means we got to be super vigilant about getting the trash out. But, you know, it's really just stuff like that. Somebody had asked me about taking temperatures. We're not taking temperatures when people walk in the building. We are not qualified to do that. I am not a nurse, and that is private health information. And that was the recommendation given to us by the nurse. The person that knows is, you're not a nurse, and it's hard to take a temperature with a no touch temperature thing. And they need to take their temperature at home and affirm they don't have a fever when they come in. And so I was like, oh, that makes total sense. I'm not a nurse. Why would I take temperatures? So just things like that. We've gotten rid of our sign-in sheet. We're doing that on a computer, where the security person signs everybody in and out. But yeah, I mean, it really is just
Amanda,
thinking about.
You've done a lot. Yeah, it's great.
My mom's a nurse. If people say you've done a lot because you do accounting things and you're like, this wasn't hard, I'm in accounting. My mom's a nurse. She just gave me a list. I was like, yes, ma'am. So.
Great. Anybody else want to weigh in and answer that question? Although Amanda did a really good job of it. Okay, Dorian, next question.
Next question. We've got a lot of Zoom questions. Zooming for people who would choose to stay home. Some of you have an in-person class, but some people want to Zoom. You have a combination of in-person classes and Zoom classes, Zoom field trips. Anybody want to talk about Zoom? What you're doing with Zoom? What you think you're doing with Zoom? Everybody shrugging their shoulders.
Yeah, Zoom, we've always used Zoom, so it's just been kind of a part of what we've done for a while now. I think that, I don't know exactly what the person's question was, but I saw something on there about how we were going to make it work for in class. So I think, I mean, currently my plan is we have an assistant in every class. So the assistant's job will be to start that Zoom meeting, and in that Zoom meeting at the end of class. I don't know if it's going to work perfectly. We've never done it this way. We've only ever done it where we've had classes outside of our co-op using Zoom, but we've never tried to do it in co-op with it. Now we have done what Amanda Campbell had said, is Zoomed a teacher in when they've missed a class, and yeah, it doesn't work perfectly. It's not like great. And so I don't know, this may be the same. It may not work perfectly. We're going to try it and just kind of see how it goes. But I don't know, was there a specific Zoom question?
The questions were, there were several of them, and you know, are you doing Zoom virtual field trips was one. Another one was, are you Zooming the teacher into the classroom, so the teacher's from home and you're Zooming in. Another one was just using Zoom in general.
We did do, after we left, we did several Zoom, I'm sure every group did several Zoom activities and stuff, but we did do a whole Zoom career day and that actually turned out really great, because unlike our normal career day where we can bring people in, we were able to have people from all over the nation like Zoom in. So we could get all kinds of great speakers come and talk to the kids. And we just did it like throughout the day. It was just scheduled and people could pop in whenever they wanted to pop in. That's really the only like really like big activity that we tried on Zoom that we didn't do in person. So.
Go ahead, Amanda Campbell.
So we have done, like we said, Zoomed in a teacher during class. One of the struggles I think we've had since breaking for COVID using Zoom is that the level that we bought into Zoom at only allows us to have one Zoom meeting going at a time. when we first started, we didn't understand that. So we had people cutting each other off. So we've since like set up a schedule and it's worked out, but we've done a couple of things over the last 3 months. It's interesting, the things that have been more popular are the more just connect. Like we did a 5 to 7-year-old snack and chat, and they would have like a theme, like planets one day and bugs another day, and they would bring their little snacks, and I don't know, they would just chat about these things. Our older kids who were at co-ops and were doing, like they had classes and then they had swim and they had gym, so they had like playtime together too. They're like on teams, and so some of the teams have continued to meet weekly on Zoom, and they've been doing things like everybody sends in their baby picture the week before, and then the person facilitating plays like a slide and the kids have to guess who it is. Stuff with their, same thing with pictures of their rooms. So ways for the kids to connect that aren't necessarily sitting and taking a class. Because like I said earlier, the kids can take classes online a million places. We have one group of kids, same sort of like teams, who met a couple weeks playing those sort of games and then decided that they wanted to put together like a good news network. So now they are creating little shows together, and they have an editing group who they're taking the kids who make the little videos and they're editing it, putting it all together. So that's actually one of the most productive, I hate saying that word, but productive things that they've been doing. And then we have a 12-year-old boy who runs a weekly Nerf chat, and they talk for an hour about their Nerf guns and things for an hour every week. But you know what? Like, this is a little group of 12-year-old and 10-year-old boys who are connecting, right? Like, if they want to chat about, I don't know what the heck you say about Nerf guns for an hour, but they do, and they love it. And so for us, as we look forward to trying to do more Zoom and acknowledging that when we have run classes, people haven't been really active. We even tried to do like almost like a spirit week, and that was, I think we did it too soon. Like everybody was still in a period of, we don't know what's going on. And moving forward, someone asked about field trips, Zoom field trips. We do plan on doing, like, not going out and actually filming a field trip, but there are lots of, video field trips. We want to do like watch parties together. Let's all go to, I don't know, wherever, and through Zoom, then you could chat about it as they're doing the field trip, or afterwards do a half-hour one, and then afterwards have like a question and answer or something like that. So those are some of the things that we're talking about. How do we move into a more virtual world if it's going to be really hard to be together in the fall? And mom nights, we do those.
I was just taking a minute to look at some of the questions. Oh my goodness, there's such good questions. I wish we had time to answer them all, but it is already 9:30. Doreen, do you have one more question for us to finish out the night here with?
I think maybe one that would probably be easiest, because we could go for days on opinions on Zoom, Google Suite, Google Classrooms, Meetup, all those. But here's one. Do you feel like once you do make a decision, and I know a couple of you said registration was just opening, that you will be more lenient with refunds as things evolve and people may choose to opt out?
For us, we will have a cutoff date. So we will have a time where, I mean, we're being very lenient up currently with how registration is going. So once we'll have a certain date that we're just going to cut it off, and after that there won't be any refunds. And that's kind of how we've always done it. But one of the things that we have done differently this time is that we have made it clear from the beginning that there are classes that might go online. There are classes that will not continue on if they can't. I mean, we can't always continue on a first grade building class online. Like some things just aren't going to continue on. In those classes, we may offer some refunds for those classes, but as far as any class that is able to continue online or the teacher is able to continue communication with, those parents have been told up front that this will be the day and there will be no refunds after that particular day. So this past time we did a lot of calculating, a lot of percentages and a lot of different things to refund money. Once we left, we were in session for 5 weeks. And after that, we had, we wanted parents to have money back. So like going forward, we don't want to be in that same situation. So we're just all up front. This is how it's going to be, and give parents that option.
It's good. It's helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When we finally went on break at the semester, the second semester of last year, we were only halfway through. And so we did offer 50% refunds to anybody that requested those, while we did also still pay our teachers. And we know that not everybody's in that position where they can do that. We just happened to have some good savings where we could, and we just felt led that that's what we should do, that people were counting on that and that people had lost their jobs. We have a similar policy moving forward as what you're describing, Angela, where we're disclosing up front, if a class goes online and you would like a refund, you're going to have to talk to the teacher. If you don't have your class go online, then yes, we would refund your money at a prorated, based on how many weeks we'd been there. But I do think that we have been extra lenient with our refunds through this. And I would say that we probably will continue to be, just because of the position that we're in. And we just feel a burden for a lot of our families, because we've heard that husbands have lost jobs that aren't coming back. These aren't jobs that they're saying, it was just a layoff. These are jobs that they're being told, that job's maybe not coming back. So that's sort of we just felt like that was sort of part of us being supportive. And we just want to do that as much as we can, within reason. But yeah, so I would say, yes, we will definitely be more lenient than we have ever been with refunds.
Thank you. Well, we're going to make us wrap up. Thank you so much, dear panelists, Amanda Sillen in Ohio, Amanda Campbell in Rhode Island, and Angela Taylor in Texas, for your time and the thought you put into your replies. Appreciate it very much. And thank you, Doreen, for moderating that chat room and the questions. There were so many good ones. Again, I'm going to encourage you to go on over to the Facebook group and pop them over there, and maybe we can get them answered that way, since we couldn't spend all night discussing, although there were some really good questions over there. So many of the attendees are thanking you, panelists, and I appreciate it so much. I hope, dear attendees, this has been helpful. It will be posted very soon, probably tomorrow, maybe the next day, over at homeschoolcpa.com/uncertain. And you can watch this again in its entirety, and feel free to share it. There will be no cost. This is just our trying to help fellow homeschool leaders. So thank you again, panelists. I appreciate you so much. And good night, everybody.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Have a good one.
Good night.